I quit my 9 to 5 corporate job 5 years ago in June 2019. So the real question is, do I regret that decision? Well, to be honest, the answer is no. And in this episode, I'm going to give you pretty much a life and career update of what I've been up to in the past 5 years. And it's just crazy talking about the past 5 years because it feels like time flies, but I also feel like time moves very slowly at the same time. It's a very weird feeling. It's very difficult for me to explain, and I'm just going to try my best in this episode. And maybe this episode is going to be a little bit different from what you would normally expect from the Corporate Survivor podcast, where we talk about all things corporate world. But I think it's so important for me to share this part of my journey because if I had not quit my corporate job, right, my career in the corporate world, I don't think we will be having this kind of conversations in the podcast every week. I would not have the kind of like community that I have on social media and all my students in the Corporate Survivor course and everything else. So this is going to be a trip down memory lane. And hopefully, there are some lessons that you can take away, whether it's career lessons, it's life lessons, or something nuggets that you can take away from my life story, my career decisions, my life decisions. I hope that you're able to do that. So back to what I was saying earlier, do I regret that decision? 100% no. I still think that quitting my 9 to 5 job was the best decision I made in June 2019. The reason is because it gave me a very important 13 months to actually spend with my mom, who was terminally ill with cancer. So she has since passed away in July 2020, and it's already 4 years since she has left us. And I actually wanted to record this episode last week, but I couldn't do that because I felt very emotional. I felt like I wanted to talk about it, but at the same time, I didn't feel like talking about it. Anyway, again, it's a very, very weird feeling, but to the point of, okay, it's really been 4 years since, my mom left us in July 2020. And, I actually had a conversation with my partner just that one day before, and he said that, hey, has it already been 3 years? And I said, no, actually, it's been 4 years. And that's why at the start I said that, I feel like time flies, but I also feel like time moves very, very, very slowly at the same time. Because here's what I've actually been up to in the past 5 years. So in June 2019, I quit my corporate job after more than 10 years in the corporate world. I had a pretty high flying career. I was promoted every year. So everything was kind of hunky dory and stuff like that. So once I got the news, I quit because I knew that, okay, this is going to be an important time. I need to make sure that I go back, be a caregiver and really focus on family for during the, basically for this time of my life. So that's kind of like what I did. In 2019, I went back home. I moved back from Singapore to Malaysia to my hometown of Penang, spent time with my mom, spent time with my family. Then in 2020, right, that's kind of like 6 months after I've quit my job. Then I started getting messages from people on LinkedIn, my ex-colleagues, my friends asking me, maybe what have you been up to? Can you kind of like give me some advice on my career and stuff like that? So I started doing a little bit of that in early 2020. And in fact, in February 2020, that also inspired me to create this Corporate Survivor podcast that you are listening to today. So this was also almost, probably 4 to 5 years. And because during that time, as a caregiver, and I don't know if you have that kind of experience, but being a caregiver, right? You need to be really strong. You need to be always very positive and very optimistic and really calm. Be calm and really manage your emotions because you don't want, the sick family member to sense that you're anxious, you're worried, you're stressed out because that's going to stress them out even more. And that's kind of how I feel because I feel like I need to be very strong. However, there's also the other part of me that feels like I need to release, whether it's my energy, my thoughts, and basically I feel I needed a release. And maybe that's something that's like not the most inspiring thing to say, but the Corporate Survivor podcast started in February 2020 because I felt that I need to let go somewhere. And that somewhere was the Corporate Survivor podcast. It's basically me, right, maybe talking to myself. That was basically what my friend told me. Say, oh, maybe you're recording a podcast. Like, what's that? That's the first thing she asked me. The second thing is like, oh, so that's like you talking to yourself. So it's kind of funny thinking back because during that time, podcast is not really like a big thing. And I think that, probably mine was like the first like Malaysian or Singaporean like careers podcast that actually appeared during that time. But anyway, so that was 2020. I started sharing my thoughts around career, the corporate world, job search, navigating the career ladder and so forth in the podcast itself. So I think that the kind of like the big thing that inspired me to just really, really start sharing with the community online was through the Corporate Survivor podcast. Then that kind of like went on with, I did a little bit of like one-on-one coaching. I connected with people like online, mainly on LinkedIn and Instagram. Then in July 2020, my mom passed away. So that time, I kind of like took a little bit of a break past social media and everything else. So I didn't really do anything. I'd say for most of the second half of 2020, I didn't really do anything. I think I ran like 1 or 2 workshops that I committed previously just to experiment, but I was not really in the mood. I think I was kind of like more in the grieving mode for most of the time. Then 6 months later, in early 2021, I decided that like, okay, I need to find something that is purposeful. I need to find something that I can actually focus and give my energy to, because I cannot be feeling upset, and I feel like I cannot be reliving memory lane every single day, because I think that's very unhealthy for me. And at the same time, I also ask myself whether, hey, am I ready to move back to corporate? Because that's like the natural thing. And I think a lot of my colleagues also expected me to go back. And during that time, I had like a lot of ex-colleagues asking me, hey, Mei Ping, do you want to really come back? Because we have positions for you and stuff like that. So that was in early 2021, but I still felt like I wasn't ready to go back to the corporate world. So what I did during that time was like, I was like, okay, since I'm doing so many, one-on-one coaching calls, it's something that I started in early 2020. So I thought, okay, why not give myself a bit of a chance to maybe work with more clients to get a much better sense of like how people are feeling and if there's any way that I can help them. But the other part also is because my dad he's an old man, right? Like he's getting older too. And I really, really worry whether he's going to be okay, because my sister doesn't live in Penang. Like she works somewhere else. So that time I was back and I was like, well, do I really want to leave my dad alone? And like, he's kind of old and stuff like that. So I felt that like, okay, you know what? Maybe I can still continue career coaching, and maybe I can still do some kind of like online career workshops that allows me to have that kind of like flexibility to monitor my dad a little bit. And I think for myself to kind of like find that space to grieve, and to find my space for myself, and to find out like what really is next. So that's something that I did in most of 2021. And actually, to my surprise, my social media accounts actually grew quite a bit. I think particularly my LinkedIn grew quite a bit, and I got a lot more people who reached out to me, who wanted to work with me one-on-one, who wanted to join my career programs and so forth. So during that time, I say that I ran it a little bit more of an ad hoc basis, because I still wanted to have space for myself. So I didn't overcommit. So I took some one-on-one calls, and I did some workshops, but it wasn't really like a 100% sort of thing. But I think for me, the mindset that I have was like, is like never say no to corporate, because that's really an area that I'm really good at, right? I did very well in corporate. I climbed the career ladder. I really understand the corporate game. So it's really natural for me to want to go back. But I also felt that time, like that kind of like personal space for me, and head space and like emotional space was so important. So I told myself, give it every 12 months, and I'll decide at the end of every year if I want to go back to corporate or I should continue doing career coaching, which is what I found really interesting. And I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but both my parents were teachers. So my dad, he's a retired headmaster, and my mom was also a teacher. They worked for the government, so they were teachers in government schools. And it's kind of funny, because when I was younger, I remember that I think when I was 5, when people ask me, what do you want to be? Maybe what do you want to be when you grow up? I've always said that I wanted to be a university professor. And if you ask me now, how did that idea come about? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's because my parents were teachers. So I'm kind of like in the education space as I grew up, like so many years ago. Maybe that was what inspired me. But yeah, I mean, thinking back, it's kind of interesting, because I guess like life comes in a circle, or rather, we eventually circle back to what we are really good at. And eventually I ended up being a career coach, a corporate mentor, and basically educating, maybe not in the sense of like a tuition teacher or the university professor, or not like a government school teacher, but still in the education, still, teaching working professionals how to plan, navigate, and to grow their careers, which it's kind of interesting how things circle around, because if you really asked me this like 5 to 6 years ago and said that maybe would you quit your corporate job to be like a career coach, definitely the answer is going to be no. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not really something that crossed my mind. But yeah, I guess funny how life works, I guess. So after that, in 2022, that was when, at the end of 2021, early 2022, I decided that I'm going to give it another 12 months to really focus on growing and working with more people in career coaching, right? In helping people to navigate and grow their careers. And one thing I did notice from, the year 2020 and 2021 of like working with so many one-on-one clients, I realized that, hey, everyone's kind of talking about the same thing. Like the problems are very similar, right? Issues around like, career clarity, work confidence, competence, and not knowing how to talk to their bosses, not knowing how to position themselves for promotions, not knowing how to seek new career opportunities. I feel like even though I'm having one-on-one conversations with different clients, it feels like I'm talking to the same person, because the issues and the challenges and the situations that my clients are talking about, I'm like, you guys are all having more or less the same problems. It's like I'm having the same conversation with the completely different people. So that inspired me to actually create my career program, the Corporate Survivor. And it's also kind of funny how this sort of came about, because at some point of me doing the one-on-one calls, I feel like I can just close my eyes and I can just give the exact same advice, because I know what you guys are going to say, because I understand you really well. I've also been there. I've worked in that exact situation that you're in. I understand how you feel. So it was really that time that I was inspired to actually create the program. So, I am a trained accountant. I worked in corporate. I worked in like, governance, risk, and compliance. So I'm not like a, branding, marketing, or whatever sales expert, like totally none of that. So the whole thing started really slow. It really came from me designing a program that I feel that I would have wanted if I had been a fresh graduate, because in the first 5 years of my career was kind of chaotic, which is why I say up to today, like, if you have worked for less than 3 to 5 years, it is going to be chaotic, and just don't feel bad that it's chaotic. Like, you should expect it to be chaotic, which is how you're going to get better. Then 2022, I created the program. Then, it's kind of like available. And, when people ask me about it, I share how the program can help them, but I was also doing a lot of like one-on-one coaching calls. So that was most of 2022. Then in 2023, I realized that, okay, one of the things that a lot of my Corporate Survivor members and clients are looking for is that, aside from dealing with their own problems, they also told me that, maybe I also want to learn from other people's problems. So sometimes it's the situation where you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes if you take a look at other people's issues, it kind of gives you a slightly different perspective, which is always very interesting. And that was when, in late 2022, 2023, I introduced the group mentoring calls to the Corporate Survivor program. So basically, you can participate in the live mentoring calls, or you can watch the recording where I would discuss different members' career, work, or job search challenges, and then we will kind of like brainstorm together. And more importantly, I will break it down to help you understand the root cause, and to really share different perspectives and like some solutions, and how you can better problem solve. So that was actually something that came out from what my members wanted. And as I was telling you a little bit earlier, I think the way that I've been approaching my career coaching, and I guess my career and my life, is really 12 months at a time, right? So at the end of every 12 months, I look at how I feel. Do I still feel that I'm helping my clients? Do I still feel like, I'm helping my members in my career program? And I also look at my family as well. I'm like, okay, my dad's, looking more frail than usual. Like, he's getting older, and all that usually helps me make that decision of like, okay, is it worthwhile for me to continue as a career coach and as a mentor, like going down this path, and like, this, brand new career path for another 12 months, or is something that I should go back to corporate? Because that door is always open. I'm still even getting like HR recruiter messages, even though I've quit for 5 years. So I think the good thing is that, whatever strategy that I have applied in the corporate world, it still works, like even though I have sort of left. So I say that back door is always open. But I would say that as of this point, right now, it's been 5 years. So now we're in like July 2024. I still feel like it was the right decision. And more importantly, I felt like I eventually got to be the educator that maybe, younger Mei Ping had wanted to do, right? The 5-year-old version of Mei Ping had actually wanted. Maybe, like I said, not in the sense of like a school teacher or a university professor, but a career coach and mentor all the same. And I still feel like it's kind of interesting how things come a full circle. It's kind of interesting how, you may not know, what life or which part of, how your career, would lead to, like from one thing to the other, but things will work out as long as like you are very, very sure that the decision that you have made at that point in time is still the right decision. It's an important decision, and you would still do the same. If you could rewind time and go back to that point, you would still make that same decision, because, or at least that's how I felt. And taking that one step forward every month, every quarter and every year, it kind of becomes like a conscious decision of actually taking that step and making that next step better than the step before. Because sometimes, like, I feel like we try to plan ahead. And like I said, if someone asks me, maybe, 5 years ago, someone asked me, hey, 5 years later, what do you think you'll be doing? I don't think I would say that, like, oh, well, I would have quit my 9 to 5 job, my mom would have passed away, and, I would have like been some sort of like career coach. I would like run my own programs or like, build my own company or whatever. I don't think I would ever say that. Probably what I would have said at that time was like, well, I guess I'll still be like working in the bank, I'll probably be like a managing director or something like that, which is like kind of up the career ladder if I had continued on that path. But then again, looking at the path that I've taken right now, I still feel happy. I feel proud. I still feel that it was the right decision that I made at that time. And it's still the right decision that I would have taken again if I had to take that again. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I guess, when you look back, it sounds like it makes sense. It worked out. But at the same time, when you're at that point, it was scary. I'd say it probably, yeah, it was scary. I won't say that, oh, it's so hunky dory, I was really inspired and I didn't care. I had care everything else and just jump into it. It wasn't like that at all. And just a final point around, some people ask me like, oh, Mei Ping, how come, you're not like bashing corporate, like, why are you not saying that, oh yeah, entrepreneurship is better and the corporate is bad? I mean, honestly, those are good questions, but I have never once felt that way. It is because of the way that I have planned and navigated and grown my career in the corporate world that actually allowed me to have that career break and allowed me to take that time off to spend time with my family, and more importantly, spend the crucial 13 months with my mom back at home before she passed on, and more importantly, given me the space and the confidence, and as well as the transferable competence to a certain extent to be able to do what I'm doing right now. So I guess if there's like one piece of advice that I can share with you, or one piece of advice that I feel that I've learned, is that everything that you have done and you have learned and you have gained to this point is something that you can take on for the future part of your career journey or your life journey, even though it may not necessarily feel that way, but it definitely is. So the fact that I have I'm a fairly structured person. I think big picture. I learn how to communicate well. I'm very organized. I'm very productive. All these things that I have learned, mastered, and refined in corporate is the same thing that I use to run my coaching sessions, to work with clients in my career coaching program. These are the same qualities, the same attributes that I bring on, and I feel like I can continue to enhance on them, because at the end of the day, it's not about the career, it's not about the company, it's not about the job, it's not about the role, it's actually you. It's the person that you have become, knowing that you have the confidence, you have the competence, and more importantly, you have the courage to take that next step forward. And I hope that this live update, for lack of a better word, this live update probably given you some nuggets of maybe insights or lessons or anything that you can take away from this conversation today. I hope that you do that. I hope that you're able to reflect and apply that to your life or your career, whichever that you see fit. And as for me, just to wrap up, 5 years on after quitting my 9 to 5 job, yeah, I still think that it was the right decision. So with that, thank you so much for being here with me and listening or watching to the Corporate Survivor podcast, or if you're a member of my Corporate Survivor career program, I really, really appreciate you. If you're someone who follows me on social media, I truly, truly appreciate you as well. Without you, there would be no Mei Ping, the career coach. Without you, there will be no Mei Ping, the corporate career mentor. Without you, basically, there'll be no version of Maping that you see and hear today. So with that, I really, really thank you. I appreciate you. And I hope that we can continue on this journey forward. Take care. See you soon.